Greetings! This is my 50th video, and I figured I'd do something different for it by showing off some models I painted for myself since I started painting a few years ago. I dabbled with painting 40k when I was a kid, though I only really started just before 10th edition dropped. I've definitely improved a lot since I've started, and I've repainted a lot of my original miniatures. You'll see some older ones in this video, and some ones that I've finished more recently. This video is about showing a bit of my painting journey, and showing some of the things that I made that I found cool. This will basically be a slideshow, so if that's not your thing, I totally get it. Normal painting videos will resume next week. I'll be going through these images pretty quickly, and there's a fair amount, so you might need to pause or go back if you want a better look at something. I'm dividing this into companies, starting with the chapter Armoury and other headquarters units. First up is Sergeant Cronus, and a command rhino that I kit bashed for him. This is a normal Mars pattern rhino, but with Cronus in the top. There's also Forge World upgrades that I got from eBay, which I now think are recasts, but you can never be sure considering Forge World resin quality. Next up is a simple drop pod. This is the old version with the moving doors and the weapons inside. It's a pretty simple paint job from about 2 years ago now. I'm pretty happy with the underside, which I did with a dry brush of Rhinox hide and then a lighter dry brush with a lighter brown. The inside was not fun to paint, but it's pretty good considering how fiddly it is. For this Firestrike servo turret, I used a bunch of new techniques to do the base, such as flicking texture paint off a toothpick to get some splatters. It came out okay, but I've definitely improved since. After the land speeders was sadly removed from the store, the Tempest went made to order, so I grabbed that. I first saw this thing in Dawn of War Soulstorm, and with the enclosed cabin I figured it'd be a fun project. Now onto the first company. Starting out with the Ballistus Dreadnought from the Leviathan box set, I painted this guy with a similar scheme to the box art, and tried a bunch of different things for the base, which ended up looking really messy. These days, I paint the trim of the Dreadnought sarcophagus with the company colour. Next onto a Venerable Dreadnought, a Castroferum Mark V pattern. With the Castroferums being removed from sale, I wanted to get this one before it went too. Those large gold reliefs look pretty nice. Tortuga Bay makes its entrance in my collection with Malum Cato. They have a newer version of him now with a different helmet, but I'm still pretty happy with this version. I tried to paint him up like the game cover art, as well as using some details from in-game screenshots. He's standing on the corpse of a Night Lord for some reason. For the captain, I used the Leviathan push-fit version, copying the markings from the box art to represent Severus Agamemnon. I think that's how you say that. I used the multi-part captain model for my lieutenant, which I painted up for video 33 on this channel. For a company champion, I used the Deathwing Knight free miniature, cutting off the Dark Angel's markings and putting him on a scenic base. Onto a 3D printed vehicle now, with the Infernum pattern Razorback. The spaced armour and multi-melter turret were originally Forge World upgrades that were removed from sale. But I really wanted to get this thing as, well, come on, it's an Infernum pattern. They're a fairly rare pattern, so I've assigned it to my first company as a relic vehicle. Here are my Stern Guard from the Leviathan box. I tried to give these guys each a bit more personality than I'm used to. I think it came out nicely. And here are the Terminators from Leviathan. These were the first ones I painted from the box. I'm really happy with the markings on the power fists, and the heat effect I painted on the assault cannon. These Tyrannic War veterans went made to order a few years ago, and being a fan of the concept, I had to pick them up. The paint job isn't great, but there's a certain charm, I guess. Those faces definitely have some personality, though I'm not sure it's a clinically sane one. Here we have some Metal Vanguard veterans, which I picked up when I was a kid. I think they came on 25mm round bases with slots, which caused them to tip over all the time. So I've glued the old base to some larger bases, and built up the base with some scenery to make it fit. I'm pretty happy with these guys, and I think they hold up even with their age. Another Vanguard veteran kit here, this time plastic, but with bodies from Tortuga Bay. Having done so many Primaris models now, I just couldn't go back to the squashed proportions on the older Firstborn models. It's a shame, but I think these look nice and I feel they honour the originals nicely. Onto the second company now. Starting with Captain Severus Acheran, which is just the captain in Phobos armour but painted up to look like the box art. I tried to replicate his markings on his knee, his right pauldron, his power pack, and the laurels on his helmet. A chaplain, which I believe was in some big box at one point, but I got it from the Heroes of the Chapter kit. I think this is probably the best chaplain pose out there currently. I'm super happy with the paint job, even now after 2 years. Next, we have Lieutenant Titus, and a generic lieutenant. I imported Titus's model from America when it was going cheap shortly after the original launch at Target stores. I had him finished in time for Space Marine 2's release, and I went without the helmet because the included helmet just makes zero sense timeline wise. Onto an old vehicle now. This is probably the oldest paint job I've got, even though it's been repainted from the original that I had. This would have been done around the time where I first started painting again, and it would have been the first model I put decals on. This Land Raider was painted a few months after the Razorback. It's definitely better, but there's next to no highlighting or weathering, and the blue was still roughly hand painted over the entire model. Alongside the Venerable Dreadnought, I also got the Ironclad Dreadnought. This was painted up earlier than that one. The banner was definitely a choice, but otherwise I think it's a fairly standard example from a few years ago. I have a few squads of Tactical Marines and Intercessors for the second company, but they're all kinda like what you see here. Most of the second company models I have are quite old at this point, only the characters that I've shown are new. Onto the third company now, which is probably my biggest company at the moment. Starting off with a Lieutenant from Leviathan, we've also got a company veteran which I used a free Sternguard miniature for. Next onto something that might make Black Templars players angry, I did some minor conversions to their Emperor's Champion model to make a company champion for my third company. I feel like the armour doesn't fully suit the aesthetic, particularly around the torso, but I like to have unique models for each character unit. Onto some very old kits now, starting with the Attack Bike. I got this just before they removed it from sale, and painted it up as a command vehicle. This was probably one of the first models I painted that I was really happy with. Not as good as I can do now, but it still has a really nice place in my collection. Alongside that command attack bike is a normal bike, which I painted up as a command vehicle as well. This guy might be a runner or messenger for the company. And here we have the infamous Invader. Nothing to say about this one, except that you might notice there's a lot of flame and melter weaponry for this company. I've themed the battle line companies around certain concepts. The second company is fairly generic, the third is fast and fiery, the fourth is stealthy to some extent, and my fifth company is heavily armed and armoured. Here's one you might recognise, the Stormspeeder Hammerstrike that I painted up for video 11 on this channel. Again, notice the melter in the bow. Onto one of my favourite models now, the Brutalis Dreadnought. I bought a resin armature and used the spare plastic carapace as a stepping stone for this beast. He's doing some kind of lunge forward with the claws, which I found really difficult to capture in a photo. The base has had a lot of effort put into it too, with debris of all kinds. Next are some aggressors. I don't really like this kit, but they've come in box sets, so I've had to use them. The wires are annoying to paint around, and the poses look just kinda janky. I also seem to mismatch the sergeant pieces with the wrong bodies every time I've done it. Now for some Eradicators, from the Heroes of the Chapter box. The multi-part version of this kit has the magazines replaced with cables that run into the power pack. It's a pretty cool design difference that even the Games Workshop web store gets wrong in their promotional images. And here we've got a 5-man Intercessor squad. No flame weapons here because that's illegal. Jokes aside, many of my models aren't game legal, but I do try to somewhat stick to doctrine. Onto the fourth company now, which I've styled to be somewhat stealthy, though I haven't fully fleshed this company out yet. Starting with a company veteran is an Eliminator from one of the Space Marine Heroes boxes. I'm fairly happy with this paint job. Nothing stands out, which I think is a good thing for an Eliminator. Standard Librarian model here. I painted this one with 4th company markings, even though librarians aren't assigned to companies. Maybe this guy served in the 4th company before joining the Librarius and wants to honour his time there. I don't know, and I made him. Some push-fit Eliminators now, from the Vanguard Task Force. I painted each cloak with a different camouflage inspired by historical designs, as a way to practice freehand. I asked 3 of my friends which camouflages they wanted to see, and I gave each of them a try. I'm not too happy with the Dazzle one, but it does work to confuse the viewer, so I guess it technically works. Here we have a squad of 3 Intercessors. I think these guys came from a starter set with paints. Since getting them, I've reassembled and repainted them, using parts from other kits to deck them out. The guy on the left has a pretty big dent in his gorget, a result of me using some tool to tightly glue the torso back together, which ended up bending the plastic. But no matter, it adds character as some kind of battle damage, proving the gorget actually works to protect the head. The old push-fit Assault Intercessor squad, with 3D and Dominus Crusade markings on the gauntlets, made for a nice project to repaint. A lot of these repainted models were originally painted for the second company, which further adds to the deprecation of that company in my painting journey. That being said, I do have a sizable Horus Heresy collection, which have gold trim. Maybe I'll show those off in a future video. Last up for the 4th company. I'm showing this tactical squad that I've made out of the old Space Marine Heroes box. Or it was 2 boxes. Either way, I kept these guys with their own sculpt, with little to no modifications. The guy on the right here has a cool pose which you rarely see anymore, but the guy on the left has a serious injury from a plasma blast. Half his face is melted off, and his armour is heavily singed. This was done to cover up where I messed up with the Citadel spray primer. I either applied too much, or there was some sort of temperature or humidity shenanigans going on. Either way, it resulted in the face and the upper part of the torso having lost its details. Like I said before, messing up is a great excuse to add some serious battle damage, and in this case, some long-lasting scars that will probably result in a bionic eye. On to the 5th company now, which I paint as a heavy weapons and armour company. First up is this captain with Gravis armour. I feel like this guy perfectly displays what I'm going for this company. Everything has to be big. Next, onto a Vindicator. Now this thing will... just look at that. An up-armoured Rhino chassis, siege shield, and a massive cannon. I've even given the commander a Mark III helmet to add to the extra armour feel. The rubble on the dozer blade is slate that I crushed with a mortar and pestle. Then I fixed it directly to the shield with VMS sand and ballast freeze. For the hazard stripes, they were my first attempt with masking. Not too bad for a first attempt. Onto an Intercessor squad here, using models from the Primaris Heroes range. I think these guys make up a Kill Team starter set now too. Next are some suppressors from the Vanguard kit. It's a shame that GW seems to have forgotten about armours other than Tacticus pattern. These Omnis models would be quite fun to have as a multi-part kit, though the flying stands are always annoying to deal with. Here we have another set of aggressors, this time with illegal loadouts. At least the aggressor armour suits my theme for the 5th company. Finally we have a tactical squad. This time it's a full 10-man one. I used Tortuga Bay's Mark 8 bodies for this one, each one having a gorget, armoured abdomen and improved ankle stabilisers. I'm super impressed with the faces I painted for this one, especially this dude. That's the sort of stuff you see on Instagram or Reddit, where people says it takes 15 hours for them to paint them. I have no idea how I managed to do it this well. On to the reserve companies now, starting with the 6th. Starting here with a captain. I think this is from some magazine. I wanted to do a nice cloak for these guys with a company colour. Despite how happy I am with this cape, this model will be retired when I get the new captain model, Ferran Arios. I'm not sure how you pronounce that one. Speaking of replacing captain models, I've got the old resin Master of Rights model, which is probably metal when they first launched. This guy is tiny by comparison, so much so the plastic helmets that I tried to swap in were too big. Luckily I had some 3D printed heads that were too small. They fit nicely here. I attempted to paint the scepter with a jade finish. It's a bit small and grainy, but hopefully comes across as jade for you guys. Finally for the 6th company, I've got a 6-man tactical squad for some reason. I believe they're leftover models from the old Heroes boxes. On to 7th company now. Captain here is from the Heroes kit, and the Kill Team starter box nowadays. The purple cape was fun to do, though the Citadel paint range is really lacking in bright purples. Contrast paints could fill the gap here, but I'm not too good with combining them with the layering effect that I was going for. And now for, chronologically, the oldest models that I have. These guys have been repainted since I first got them. Their first paint job was horrible. It looked like I tried to use the spray can tool from Microsoft Paint. Nothing was in the lines, the paint was thick and obscured details, and there was even superglue frosting that I painted over. That took quite some work to clean up and get it repainted. Now onto the 8th company. This is my smallest company by model count, with only 5 models painted. The captain here was my original 2nd company captain, but I repainted the trim so I didn't have 2 2nd company captains. I think that simple change makes it look good enough without needing to redo the whole thing. For a small command squad, I used some random assault marine models with normal power packs, and a banner. The only ancient in my army is this guy, with an attempt at freehanding the 8th company banner. I'm happy with how I did, but it's by no means perfect. On to the last reserve company now, the 9th. I've got no captain for this company yet, so we're starting out with one of the 2 squads that I have. This Devastator squad has bodies from Tortuga Bay, but is otherwise mostly plastic. I painted up the sergeant here for video 19 on this channel. I didn't have the rest of the squad ready to show off for that video, but they're all done now. Here's another Devastator squad, this time with plasma weapons. Like the previous squad, they also use Tortuga Bay bodies. Finally onto the 10th company, for scouts and Vanguard units. For a lieutenant, I've got this guy from the Vanguard set. I painted him a while ago, which was actually a repaint, though I might go back again and try and add some additional details to this one, clean it up a bit. Here are all my old scale scouts. I had one of these kits when I was a kid, but I wanted to see what I could do with some new ones. So I bought the snipers and another normal squad later, a few months before they were removed from sale. Sergeant Tellian here leads them. I got him as a made-to-order model alongside Cronus. These scout snipers were fun to do. I painted each cape with a different pattern, again trying to mimic some real-life camouflages as practice. I also did my first green stuff with the sergeant, attaching a sniper to his back with a green stuff sling. I think it fits in nicely. Here are the scout squads themselves. This one was the brand new one. I think I got the faces to look alright. They're really old sculpts and I'm not the greatest painter, but I still think they're pretty good. And here's the second squad. This was the old one that I've reassembled and repainted, so it's not as rough as it originally was. I think I managed to make them look as good as possible with my skill set at the time, and with the limitations of the old poses. In addition to those scouts is this old scout bike. I have no idea where I got this, but considering I have a single bike and a single scout bike, it was probably some start collecting box or the like. Either way, this has been repainted, and the antenna has since broken off, though I think it's fine being that small. I know the older plastic was a lighter grey and was a little bit less durable. Onto the Vanguard units now, starting with an Impulsor. I'm not sure how I feel about the grav tanks that were introduced alongside the Primaris. The grav plates are super annoying to paint, and the flight stands make it difficult to use airbrushes or spray paint. Complaints aside, I really like how I painted this one. It's about a year old at this point, and I think it holds up. I built up the base of a flat panel and a ramp with natural materials. Depending on which way the flying stand is rotated, it looks like it's either hovering on the flat part or going up a hill. Next up, we've got a squad of infiltrators. I think these are from the Vanguard kit. I split the Vanguard kit into 2 squads of 5. Here's the second squad. These squads have a blue trim on their pauldron, or rather, no trim, as per Codex Company colour rules. Finally, we've got some Incursors, which I got in a combat patrol. I'm not sure about the silver on their helmets, but otherwise I think it'd be a fairly featureless blue. And that's it. I do have more models that I haven't shown, but it's kind of just more of the same. I've chosen a random selection of things that I found cool and things that, show different levels of my skill over the years. I do also have a Horus Heresy version of these Ultramarines, and some Astra Militarum, and like 1 or 2 other random things, but I'm not sure how to end this. So I'll just say I hope you enjoyed this in some way. I paint for my own enjoyment, so there's nothing that's been done that's to any standard other than the one I set for myself. But anyway, like I said earlier, next week's video will be back to normal. I hope you stick around for that one.